Hey, Wicked Deke here. Happy NHL Trademas Eve. Yes, the night before the happiest day of the year. Okay, happiest day of February. All right, the happiest day of the third week of February. We are on Trademas Eve, and this year it is looking like may not be that exciting. The NHL teams have moved away from the last second trade to actually avoiding panic situations and making trades early, knowing what they want for their players, and then going and get it. So you've seen quite a few players, obviously, already moved. About the only two out there that strike me as being potential difference makers are Kreider and Pajot. And Kreider, you're hearing maybe he signs with New York, maybe he doesn't. I like him. I'm not really sure why they're all that hot to get rid of him. Seems like a player is still young enough and productive enough that he could really help the team. But of course, his value is about as high as it can get right now. So I can see the other side of that. Probably get some really good assets. Pajot. If I was him, I would definitely be hoping to get out of Ottawa for all the obvious reasons. He's had a very good season, so you could see Ottawa, recouping even more draft prospects and what have you out of that. So it seems like those two guys probably would go, and push comes to shove. Of course, where do they end up? Who knows? The Leafs. We all saw it last night. Great story for David Ayers. Zamboni driver, kidney transplant, brought in when the Canes goalies managed to get knocked out of the game. He played basically half the game and only gave up 2 goals, and the Canes won. And the Leafs getting slaughtered just everywhere for not scoring more on him. And I was one of the people doing that and laughing at him and everything else. But again, a couple things there. First of all, the Leafs weren't getting shots on any of the previous goalies, Canes goalies either. They only had like 15 shots in the game. They got 10 on Ayers. He saved 8 of them. So it wasn't like they were, rolling along and suddenly stopped playing hard or anything like that. The Hurricanes were just a better team. The Hurricanes are a much more balanced team, far superior to the Leafs. The Leafs have some great forwards, but Kyle Dubas and his NHL fantasy team approach to building a roster is just a debacle. It really is. When they play the better teams, more likely than not, they're going to be in trouble. And so that's kind of what happened last night. Now, it's a great story. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, if you're a Leafs fan, Daryl Sutter, the former Kings coach, used to have a saying about, park and ride. Or Bill Belichick after the the Patriots got destroyed in some game, and at the press conference, everybody was doom and gloom, and all he would say is, "We're off to Cincinnati," which was their next game. It's just one game, but I think you do look at the Leafs, and that roster construction is horrible. Dubas, you really have to have serious doubts about him as a general manager, because that roster is just a mess. But two, if you look at them, they seem to be really in need of like some solid veteran presence, the kind of veterans that don't necessarily have to be, massive stars, but the kind of guys who play the game right. If you look at the ice last night, one of them that was there playing on the other team, Justin Williams. If you had a Justin Williams in the Maple Leafs locker room, or, Mike Richards in his prime, those kinds of players, I think you would see more consistency from the Leafs. They need somebody to get in there and say, "Hey, what the hell? Every game's important. We need to be consistent. You guys that are lagging need to get off your ass," and so on and so forth. And it doesn't look like the Leafs have that now. Clifford, who they brought in, is a good character guy, not a big talker though. I don't think necessarily. Certainly not to the veterans and things of that sort. And he's new to the team. John Tavares, the captain. Some of the things you heard out of New York, maybe not necessarily, the guiding light that you would hope to be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the captain. A lot of teams that win, it's not just the captain. They have a lot of secondary leadership. So when the going gets tough, the team doesn't, just kind of collapse, which is what seems to happen with the Leafs a lot. And the team is just kind of bizarre. I mean, how can you play Pittsburgh one night, get completely just mowed over, and then a couple games later, you play Pittsburgh again, and, you shut them down. So there is some potential there, but man, they got to find some consistency. And, you look at that team and you think about them playing either Boston or Tampa. Yeah, I know what happened to Tampa last year, but Tampa looks like a different team this year. They seem to be much more cognizant of game situations and what have you. And it's just hard to see the Leafs beating either of those teams unless Marner or Matthews just go completely nuts. And you can bet the other teams are going to be focusing on, shutting them down. So if you're a Leafs fan, I wouldn't completely freak out. It was one game. And, you just really need a better GM, quite frankly, somebody who can construct that roster in a way that's going to make sense. It's going to have balance so that you aren't just a complete disaster in your defensive zone, which if you watch the Leafs now, they pretty much are. So what about Trademas Eve for the Kings? Well, looks like all the major work is done. Yeah, we're hearing Trevor Lewis. 6 teams interested in Trevor Lewis. Well, that sounds like 6 GMs who should be fired. Carts to Philadelphia. That's not going to happen. I'm a Flyers fan. That's not going to happen. D-Man. Maybe Hutton, maybe Ryan. Yeah, I can see them traded. If any of those guys are traded, you're looking at, 4th round pick, 5th round pick for them. With Carts, maybe a 3rd round pick. But do you really think Carts is going to get traded to Philly? I don't know. I mean, it's a great nostalgia trade, but I have some doubts. They seem to still think that Nolan Patrick's going to play this year. But, I guess we can watch and see. But not exactly counting on it. So again, Kreider, Pajot, they look like the big catches. Other than that, I have some doubts. And the bad news, after Trademas Eve, if you're a Kings fan, well, that's pretty much it. Not much happening until the draft. So it's time to adopt another team for the playoffs and, enjoy them, or just watch playoffs in general, enjoy the hockey, because the Kings ain't going to be there. They're on track for 66 points this year, which is awful. But of course, that was part of the plan. So hibernation will be there. About the only thing to watch will be Gabe Velarde, see how he develops. I thought he was a little bit behind the play last night. Looked like all the adrenaline and excitement from that he had during the first game had probably worn off a little bit, and he was a little bit behind on the pace, which is natural. That's kind of what you'd expect for rookie coming up. If they give him a week or two, I'm sure he'll improve dramatically as he gets used to it. But it'll be interesting to see if they do that. They may well send him down to the AHL team so they can go on a Calder Cup run. And I know a lot of people are saying, who cares about the Calder Cup? Well, that's true, but it'll give him a chance to play with a lot of those players that it potentially will come up to the Kings next year and the year after. Start developing, relationships in the intensity of a playoff chase, and that would definitely be good. Certainly be better than playing out the string with the Kings, in my opinion. But we'll see what the Blakester and the Ewok King want to do. So anyways, happy Trademas Eve. Sadly, I think there will not be many gifts underneath the Trademas Eve shrub, but we'll just have to see. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peek out.